There is nothing worse than stepping into the river and realizing your waders are leaking, especially when you thought you bought a good pair. Buying waders sounds simple until you actually start looking.
You got different brands, different features, different prices, and it's not always clear what makes one wader so much better than another. Now, we've reviewed approximately 8,000 waders over the years, and the conclusion we've come to is that most folks either overpay or they end up buying something they replace way too soon.
I even had one season where I went through 3 pairs of waders in 3 months. Not ideal.
So in this video, we are going to simplify the wader buying process and break it down so that you can pick the best wader for you.
So first, do you even need waders? The honest answer is not always. If you're fishing from the bank or in the middle of summer and you're wet wading, you can absolutely get by without waders. But once you're stepping into rivers, especially in colder water, that's when they make a huge difference. They keep you dry, they keep you comfortable, you look really professional like a fish catching machine, and they open up other water that you otherwise couldn't reach. So if you're thinking about getting a pair, Spencer has been reviewing and writing about fly fishing gear for over a decade. He's tested everything from budget waders to waders that cost so much, you think they just put the fish in the net for you. So let's break it all down into 4 simple decisions.
These 4 decisions will simplify the buying process and make picking up a pair of waders a piece of cake. The first decision you gotta make is boot foot or stocking foot. And no, these aren't some weird cousin creatures to Bigfoot. Boot foot waders are exactly what they sound like. They come with the boot attached and you don't have to worry about buying a separate pair of boots. The downside to boot foot waders is the boots themselves can be kinda uncomfortable and they're not the best for a lot of walking and wading and hiking around. Stocking foot waders, on the other hand, just have a neoprene sock attached right to the end of the wader. You'll buy a separate pair of boots to go with these waders, but at the end of the day, they're a bit more comfortable and they're a lot more versatile and, in my experience, much more stable and helpful in the water. And for the most part, stocking foot waders with separate boots is what a lot of anglers use. So yes, we do recommend buying a separate pair of boots to go with your waders, but we'll break everything you need to know about boots down in a separate video. Decision number 2, and honestly, this is barely a decision, but you've got to choose between breathable waders or neoprene. Neoprene is thicker, insulated, and designed to keep you warm. So it's really meant for cold conditions where you're not moving and hiking around a lot. But they're heavier, they're less comfortable, they're not very versatile, and getting them off feels like you're peeling off your own skin. Breathable waders, on the other hand, are lightweight and designed to keep the water out while letting the heat escape. They're way more comfortable, a lot easier to hike around and move in, and you can fish in them almost year-round just by adjusting your layers underneath. Most fly anglers are using breathable waders, and for the vast majority of us, that's going to be the best choice. Decision number 3 is a really important one and probably what we get asked about the most, and that'd be the price. This is where people either waste money or they get it right. And honestly, there's 2 paths you can walk here. The first path is to buy waders that are at or underneath that roughly $300 price point. Waders in this price range are great for occasional fishing. Or you're gonna invest in a higher end pair that's built to last longer, fit better, and give you a better overall experience. And to be completely honest, there's not a lot of middle ground here. Most waders fall into one of those 2 categories. We'll break this down more later in the video, but for right now, just think about which direction you're leaning. Decision number 4 is the question on the minds of cattle all across the fruited plain. Which brand do I go with? There's a lot of options out there, and honestly, they look kind of similar, especially on the surface. What really matters isn't the logo, it's what happens after you start wearing the waders. Warranty, repair support, the reputation of that brand, those should all factor into which pair you decide to go with. At some point down the road, your waders are going to wear out, they're going to start leaking, and you want to know that the company you picked has your back and is going to help you out in that situation. Now, if you want help actually choosing a pair, we put together a full guide that completely breaks down the wader buying process. It breaks down exactly what we recommend, why, and which ones are going to be best for you. You can scan the QR code here on the screen or hit the link below this video. All right, now we got to talk about the most important and probably most overlooked part of buying waders, and that's how they fit.
Now let's talk about fit, because if you get this wrong, nothing else matters. You could have the best waders in the world, but if they don't fit right, they're gonna be uncomfortable, harder to move in, and honestly, they're not gonna last as long. If your waders are too tight, you're gonna feel restricted, you won't be able to move well, and you're gonna put extra stress on seams and material. If they're too loose, it's gonna feel like you're swimming in a trash bag. They're gonna feel bulky, awkward, and harder to control when you're walking or wading. What you're really looking for is balance. You want enough room that you can move around comfortably, but not so much that they feel baggy or sloppy. Make sure you can bend your knees, squat down, and step up onto something without feeling restricted. Make sure you've got enough room for layering, especially if you're fishing in colder conditions. And pay attention to how the boot fits with your wading boots, because that plays a big role in overall comfort too. At the end of the day, good fit means that you're comfortable, you can move naturally, and that your waders are gonna hold up over time. And one quick tip here, if you're buying waders in person, try them on and move around in them. That's the easiest way to dial in fit. But if you're buying them online, which is what I like to do most of the time, look for a good sizing guide and ideally a company that helps you make the right choice. Some brands like Skwala, which is what we use, have really solid sizing resources, videos, and even customer support, and that makes a big difference. Now, the next thing to think about is how you actually fish, because that's going to drive some of your decision. If you're on smaller streams or walking a lot, you'll want something lighter and more mobile. Bigger rivers and more wading, durability matters more. Still water, comfort becomes a bigger factor. And colder conditions, you need room to layer. There's no one perfect pair for everyone. What matters is where and how you fish. And this is something the better brands really understand. They're not making just one pair of waders for everyone. They're building different waders for different types of fishing. And again, Skwala is a great example here. Their waders are designed with purpose depending on how you fish. Some are built to be lighter and more mobile for covering water. Others are built for durability when you're fishing hard and putting in a lot of days. And that's the mindset you want to have when choosing a pair. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, because in reality, once you start using your waders, they're eventually going to leak. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And most of the time, it happens in the same places. Knees, seams, the crotch, gravel guards, areas that get the most wear. And the more you fish, the faster it's gonna happen. That doesn't mean that your waders are bad, it's just the nature of the materials that are used and what they're used for. But this is where the differences between waders really start to show up. How long they last, how long they hold up, and what happens when they do start to fail. This is where a lot of people start thinking, okay, so if I spend more, they're gonna last longer? And generally that's true. Now, you might've heard some guy that bought a $100 pair of waders at some big box store and they lasted 20 years. In our experience, that's definitely the exception, not the rule. Higher end waders usually have a lot more thought put into design, better materials, and are built to hold up better over time. But not everyone needs to spend that kind of money, especially if you're just starting out or if you don't fish that much. So let's break down when it actually makes sense to invest in a higher end pair and when a budget pair is the better move.
I've been reviewing fly fishing gear for over a decade, and in that time I've used a lot of different waders. I've had great experiences with cheap ones and really expensive ones too. In that time, I've seen a lot of different models get introduced that were the greatest and the best and the biggest innovation of their time, and I've seen others just kind of fizzle out. What's really interesting is that I've started to notice a pattern when I look at the wader industry as a whole. Essentially, there's 3 tiers of waders you can pick from. Under $300, this is what we would call the commodity tier. Most of these waders are made with really similar materials and construction, just different logos. They'll absolutely get the job done. I've worn them myself for a while, but they're not built for heavy use. As a rule, you can almost expect them to wear out quicker, and usually there's not much in terms of warranty or repair support. If you're only fishing a handful of times a year, or you're just starting out, you're not sure if you're gonna like this sport, these can be a fantastic option. But if you're someone who's on the water a lot or likes to hike and move around a lot when you're fishing, these waders probably aren't the best choice for you. Now we move into this $300 to $500 range, and honestly, this is kind of the dead zone in the wader world. You're paying more for the waders, but you're not always getting a meaningful upgrade in performance or durability. This is where it's really easy to overpay for small improvements. Then you hit that $550 and up range, and that's where things really start to change. You end up with better materials, better construction, and more thoughtful design that actually improves your time on the water. And just as important, you're getting brands that stand behind their product with real warranty and repair programs too. These waders usually do cost a bit more upfront. You might need a payday loan or to go pawn your wedding ring to afford them, but the cost per use ends up working out in your favor. Here's a real simple way to think about it. If you're fishing once or twice a month during the warmer months, maybe 10 to 20 days total per year, a budget pair under $300 is totally fine. But if you fish more consistently, maybe you're on the water every week, or you're putting 30, 40, or even 50 plus days a year on the water, you're gonna burn through those cheaper waders pretty quickly. So let's look at what that actually means in terms of cash money. If you're fishing about once a week during the season, spring, summer, fall, maybe a couple times during the winter, that ends up being around 25 to 30 days per year. And if your waders last about 100 days, which is pretty standard before you see major problems, that's a little over 3 years of use. So if you're spending around $569 on a pair of waders, that breaks down to about $5 to $6 per day on the water. And that's not even factoring in taking good care of them or repairs, which can extend that life even further, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So when you look at it that way, that big upfront cost starts to feel like a much more reasonable investment. And at this point, it probably ought to just come out and say it, Skwala is our official wader partner. The reason we partnered with them is pretty simple. We've been using their gear here at VFC for years, and I actually have been using their stuff since right when they started, long before we thought of any partnership. We have bought and used and abused a lot of waders and boots in my time here at VFC, and Skwala is the brand that we keep coming back to. What really stood out to us about Skwala isn't just the bougie waders with all the pockets and the fancy zipper. That stuff's nice, but what really grabbed our attention is how they approach every single product. Their gear is built around solving a specific problem on the water, and they don't just update it and release a new version every year. They're constantly trying to improve it and make it better. And on top of all of that, the team at Skwala is top notch. They're a blast to work with. They're all fishy dudes, and their customer service has saved my butt more than a couple of times. And for us, that's what really matters. If you know anything about VFC, it's that we want you to live real life. You have that incredible experience out on the water, and part of that comes from your gear. So we wouldn't recommend stuff that doesn't help you do that. Now we're going to talk about how you could potentially double the lifespan of your waders and get even more out of your investment.
If you take care of your waders, you can significantly extend their life. So here's 4 tips on how to do that. Number 1, and this is the most important, dry them completely after use. Don't just throw them in a bag or leave them crumpled up in the truck. Hang them up and let them fully dry inside and out. If you don't, mildew can start to grow, which is quite smelly and can break down fabric over time. Don't ask me how I learned that. Number 2, watch where you step. A lot of damage doesn't happen in the water, it happens getting to it. Bushes, branches, sharp rocks, barbed wire, anything that can cause small holes and eventually leaks. I used to just walk straight through sharp brush or bushes, thinking my waders were indestructible, not realizing that I was slowly damaging them. They're durable, but the less abuse that they take, the longer they'll last. Number 3, clean them occasionally. This is something I actually learned from the guys over at Skwala. If you have a front load washer, you can run them on a delicate cycle every few trips to wash out dirt and sweat. Or you can wash them by hand with some water and soap. Just make sure you clean both sides. And don't put them in the dryer, just hang them up and let them dry completely. Number 4, fix leaks early. If you notice a leak, take care of it as soon as you can. A quick fix now is a lot better than a big problem later. This is also where having a good company behind the product makes a big difference. With Skwala, if I notice a leak, I can send them in and get them repaired. Sometimes they're even back to me within a week or 2, depending on demand and shipping times. You can fix leaks yourself too, and there's a ton of great resources and YouTube videos about it, but personally, I like to let the experts handle it. Do those 4 things and you'll get way more life out of your waders. So hopefully this helps simplify the process of choosing the right waders and what actually matters. But once you've got your waders dialed in, the next piece of the puzzle is boots. Because that's just as important when it comes to comfort, stability, and how to move in the water. So in the next video, we're breaking down everything you need to know about wading boots, how to choose the right ones, what actually matters, and what to avoid. Check it out right here.